You remember their faces, don't you? Don't lie to me. Don't sit there and pretend you forgot. You didn't forget. You couldn't forget even if you tried, because some things burn themselves into the back of your skull so deep that no amount of time, no amount of success, no amount of I'm over it can erase them. You remember the exact moment someone looked at you, someone you trusted, someone you maybe even loved and laughed not with you, at your idea, at your dream, at the thing you spent months working up the courage to even say out loud. You finally opened your mouth. You finally let that thing out of your chest, and they laughed, and something inside you broke that day, something you've never fully put back together. I know because I've been there. And here's the thing. Nobody tells you that laugh. That single moment of humiliation, it didn't just embarrass you, it rewired you, it changed the way you walk into rooms, it changed the way you talk about your future, it made you smaller, quieter, safer, and you've been living inside that smaller version of yourself ever since, thinking it was your choice, thinking it was just who you are. It wasn't who you are, it was who they made you. But I need you to stay with me right now, because what I'm about to tell you over the next hour is going to change the way you see every single person who ever doubted you, every single laugh, every single smirk, every single be realistic that was thrown at your face like a slap. And by the end of this, you're going to understand something that most people don't figure out until it's too late. Something that separates the people who make it from the people who almost did. Let's go. You clicked on this video for a reason. And no, it wasn't random. It wasn't the algorithm. It wasn't because you were bored. You clicked because the title hit something deep, something you've been carrying around like a stone in your chest for weeks, maybe months, maybe years, because someone laughed at you. Maybe it was recent. Maybe it was your coworker who smirked when you mentioned your side project. Maybe it was your own family sitting around the dinner table and you made the mistake of sharing something real, something raw, something you've been dreaming about when nobody's watching, and they looked at each other with that look. You know the look that, oh, here we go again, look, that little glance between your mother and your father or your brother and your sister that said more than words ever could. They didn't even need to open their mouths. The look was enough. Or maybe it goes back further than that. Maybe it was in school. Maybe you were the kid who was always a little different, a little too quiet, a little too ambitious for the room you were in. Maybe you raised your hand once and said something honest, something that mattered to you, and the whole class laughed, and the teacher, the person who was supposed to protect you, didn't say a word. Maybe they even smiled, and in that moment you learned a lesson that was never on the syllabus. You learned that the safest thing you can do in this world is shut up. Blend in. Don't be too loud. Don't want too much. Don't dream too big. Because if you dare to want something extraordinary, people will punish you for it. And so you stopped talking about your dreams. You stopped sharing your plans. You stopped raising your hand. You learned to keep your fire hidden behind your teeth, to lock your ambitions in a room inside your chest that nobody else gets a key to. And you told yourself it was wisdom. You told yourself it was maturity. You told yourself, I don't need their approval anyway. But that's not what happened, is it? What actually happened is something darker, something quieter, something you don't admit even to yourself at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep and you're staring at the ceiling. What actually happened is you started believing them. You started believing that maybe they were right, maybe you aren't cut out for this. Maybe the dream is too big. Maybe you're too late. Maybe other people can do things like that. Other people from better families with better connections, with more money, with more talent, but not you, not someone like you, not someone from where you come from. And that belief, that quiet, poisonous, invisible belief has been running your life ever since. Every time you open your laptop to work on that project and then close it 15 minutes later, that's them. Every time you type out an application for something amazing and then delete it before hitting send, that's them. Every time you look in the mirror and a voice in your head says, who do you think you are? That's not your voice. That's theirs. That laugh you heard 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it never stopped playing. It just moved inside. It became the background music of your entire life, and you've been dancing to it without even knowing it. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this. When was the last time you went after something with everything you had? Not halfway, not let me test the waters, not let me try, but also have a backup plan in case I fail so nobody can say I tried too hard. When was the last time you burned the boats? When was the last time you put yourself out there so completely, so nakedly, so recklessly that if it didn't work, it would have destroyed you? You can't remember, can you? And that's not because you're lazy. That's not because you don't have talent. That's not because you lack ambition. It's because somewhere along the line, someone convinced you that wanting too much is dangerous, that reaching too high is stupid, that the smart thing to do is keep your head down, stay in your lane, and be grateful for what you have. And you listen. God help you. You listen. Here's what nobody ever told you about the people who laughed at you. And this is going to sting, so brace yourself. They didn't laugh because your dream was stupid. They laughed because your dream scared them. Let me say that again, because I need it to really sink in. They didn't laugh because you were ridiculous. They laughed because what you said, that thing you wanted, that vision you had, that future you described, it held up a mirror to their own life. And when they looked at that mirror, they saw someone who gave up, someone who settled, someone who had dreams once too and killed them quietly, safely, without anyone noticing. And when you stood there full of fire, full of hope, full of terrifying, beautiful, stupid belief, you reminded them of who they used to be before the mortgage, before the excuses, before they traded their soul for a comfortable routine that slowly ate them alive. Your dream wasn't the problem. You were the problem. You were too alive, too hopeful, too much, and people who have given up on themselves cannot stand to be in the presence of someone who hasn't. Think about that. Really think about it. The person who told you to be realistic, what does their life look like? Are they living a life that makes them come alive? Are they jumping out of bed in the morning? Are they building something, creating something, chasing something that makes their blood move faster? Or are they just existing, comfortable, sure, safe? Absolutely, but alive, truly, painfully, dangerously alive. You already know the answer. And this is the part that kills me. This is the part that keeps me up at night. Because the people who laughed at your dreams, they didn't even realize what they were doing. Most of them weren't being malicious. Most of them genuinely thought they were helping you. They thought they were protecting you from disappointment. They thought they were being loving. But what they were actually doing without knowing it, without meaning to, was passing their fear on to you. Like a disease, like a virus that jumps from one person to the next, and the host doesn't even know they're infected. Your father didn't kill your dream because he's a bad man. He killed it because someone killed his, and their father killed theirs. It's a chain, a generational chain of crushed ambitions and borrowed fears and swallowed words and dreams that died in the throat because the person carrying them was too afraid of what people would say. And you're next in line unless you decide right now, right here in this moment, that the chain breaks with you. Let me tell you about a man, and I don't want you to just hear this story. I want you to feel it. I want you to see yourself in it. Because if you're honest, really brutally honest, this man's story is your story, just with different names and different cities and different details. There was a man who had a dream, not a small dream, not I want a raise dream or I want a new car dream, a real dream, the kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m., the kind that makes your hand shake when you think about it, the kind that sounds insane when you say it out loud to people who don't have one. And he made the mistake of telling the wrong people. He told his family, they looked at each other, he told his friends, they changed the subject, he told the one person he thought would understand, the person who was supposed to have his back no matter what. And that person looked at him with pity, not anger, not disappointment, pity, and pity is worse than hatred. Hatred means someone sees you as a threat. Pity means someone has already written your obituary in their head. So he went quiet, he stopped talking about the dream. He put it in a box, he buried the box in the basement of his mind, and he went back to his normal life. Normal job, normal routine, normal conversations, normal. But the dream didn't die. That's the thing about real dreams. They don't die just because you stop feeding them. They starve. Sure, they get thin and weak and barely visible, but they don't die. They sit there in the dark, scratching at the walls, whispering your name when everything else goes quiet. And every night when the world got still, he could hear it. A tiny voice from a locked room saying, "You know, this isn't who you're supposed to be." He ignored it. For months, for years, he got good at ignoring it. He drowned it out with Netflix and social media and busyness and alcohol and noise. Anything to avoid the silence, because in the silence, the dream would come back. And with it, the faces of everyone who laughed, everyone who doubted, everyone who looked at him like he was crazy for wanting more than what he was given. He learned to live a half-life. He learned to smile on the outside while something inside him was dying. He learned to say, "I'm fine," so convincingly that even he almost believed it. But there were moments, tiny, fragile, devastatingly honest moments where the mask slipped. Usually at night, usually alone, usually after a particularly soul-crushing day at a job that was slowly turning him into a ghost. He'd sit on the edge of his bed and he'd feel it. This massive suffocating weight on his chest. Not sadness exactly, something worse than sadness. A feeling of wrongness, like he was wearing someone else's life, like he had accidentally walked into the wrong movie theater and sat down in someone else's seat, and the film playing on the screen had nothing to do with him. And in those moments, he'd remember who he was before they laughed, before they told him to be realistic, before he learned to make himself small enough to fit inside other people's expectations. He'd remember the version of himself that believed anything was possible, the version that didn't ask for permission, the version that looked at the world not as a series of limitations, but as a blank canvas the size of the sky, and he'd miss that person. God, he'd miss that person. He'd miss that person the way you miss someone who died, because in a way that person did die. They were killed slowly, quietly, methodically by every laugh, every smirk, every be realistic, every that's not how the world works. Every you should be grateful for what you have. You know this man, don't you? You know him because you are him, or maybe you're her. Maybe you're the woman who had a business idea that everyone said was crazy. Maybe you're the kid who wanted to be an artist in a family full of accountants. Maybe you're the person who wanted to leave the country, start fresh, build something nobody had ever seen before, and everyone around you looked at you like you'd lost your mind. It doesn't matter what the dream was. It doesn't matter what the specific laugh sounded like. What matters is what happened next. What matters is what you did with the pain, and this is where it gets interesting. This is where I need your full attention, because what I'm about to say is going to feel wrong. It's going to feel backwards. It's going to feel like I'm lying to you. I'm not. Here it is, that laugh, that moment of humiliation, that night you cried in your car because someone made you feel like nothing. It was the best thing that ever happened to you. I told you it would feel wrong, but stay with me, because here's what I've learned, and I've learned this the hard way through years of watching people rise and fall and rise again. The people who change the world are never the ones who are encouraged. They're never the ones who had it easy. They're never the ones who walked into a room and everyone clapped. The people who change the world are the ones who are laughed at. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper because his editor told him he lacked imagination. Imagination. Walt Disney, the man who built an empire of imagination so vast it changed the childhood of every generation after him. Fired for lacking the one thing he had more of than anyone else on the planet. Steven Spielberg, maybe the greatest filmmaker who ever lived, applied to film school and was rejected. Not once, not twice, 3 times. The admissions officer looked at his grades and said no, didn't even bother to look at his work, just no. 3 times the man went on to create Jaws, Schindler's List, Jurassic Park films that redefined what cinema could be, but some admissions officer with a clipboard decided he wasn't good enough. Stephen King wrote his first novel, Carrie, and sent it out into the world. It came back rejected. He sent it again, rejected, 30 times. 30 publishers looked at the work of one of the greatest storytellers in modern history and said, no thanks. He threw the manuscript in the trash, done, finished. If it weren't for his wife fishing it out of the garbage and convincing him to try one more time, we would never have heard of Stephen King. Colonel Sanders, you know him, the face on every KFC bucket, started his chicken business at 56 years old. 56, an age when most people have already decided their story is written. He drove around with his recipe in the back of his car, walking into restaurants, cooking for owners, begging them to try his chicken. He was rejected over 1,000 times. 1,000! Can you imagine being told no 1,000 times and still knocking on the next door? And here's my favorite. Jack Ma, before he built Alibaba into one of the biggest companies on the planet, this man was rejected from every job he applied to. He applied to work at KFC. Rejected. He applied to the police. Rejected. He applied to Harvard 10 times. Rejected every single time. He even took 24 people to apply at a new KFC that opened in his city. 23 of them were hired. He was the only one who wasn't. Now, why am I telling you these stories? Not to motivate you, not to give you some feel-good, you can do it speech that evaporates by tomorrow morning. I'm telling you because I need you to see something hiding in plain sight, something that connects every single one of these stories and connects them to your story. Every single one of these people was laughed at, dismissed, rejected, told they weren't enough, told to give up, told to be realistic, and every single one of them remembered the faces. But here's the difference. Here's the thing that separates them from the millions of other people who were also laughed at but never did anything about it. They didn't use the laughter as a reason to stop. They used it as fuel. And that word fuel is the key to everything I'm going to tell you next. But I'm not going to tell you yet because you're not ready. I know that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. You're not ready because you're still doing something that's keeping you stuck, something invisible, something so baked into your daily existence that you can't even see it anymore. It's like asking a fish to describe water. You're so deep inside that you don't even know it's there. And until you see it, until you really truly see what you've been doing to yourself every single day, nothing changes. No amount of motivational videos, no amount of self-help books, no amount of affirmations in the mirror, nothing. Because you're not fighting an external enemy. You're not fighting the people who laughed. You're not fighting the haters or the doubters or the critics. You're fighting yourself, and you don't even know it. There's a war happening inside you right now, right this second, and it's a war between 2 versions of you, 2 completely different people living inside the same body, sharing the same heartbeat, looking out through the same eyes. One of them is the person you were born to be, the version of you that existed before the laughter, before the doubt, before the fear. This version of you is powerful. This version is relentless. This version wakes up with fire in their blood and goes to bed with the taste of ambition still on their tongue. This version doesn't ask for permission, doesn't apologize for wanting more, doesn't shrink in rooms full of people who are playing small. And the other version is the one that was created the moment someone laughed. The version that learned to protect itself by becoming invisible. The version that traded dreams for comfort, ambition for acceptance, fire for safety. These 2 versions are at war. Every single day, every decision you make is a battle between them. Every time you hesitate, every time you hold back, every time you say maybe later, or I'm not ready, or the timing isn't right. That's the second version, winning. And it's been winning for a long time, hasn't it? But here's the thing. Here's the thing I need you to hear. With every cell in your body, the first version, the real you, the original you, the you before the damage, hasn't given up. It's still in there, bruised, starving, barely breathing, but alive, patiently, desperately, furiously waiting for this moment. For the moment you finally stop running from the truth and turn around and face it. The truth that you were never meant to live like this. The truth that the smallness you've accepted isn't your destiny. It's your prison. The truth that every single person who laughed at you gave you the greatest gift they could have possibly given you, and you've been too blind to see it. What gift, what could being laughed at possibly give you that's worth anything? I'll tell you, but not yet, because in the next part of this, I'm going to break something open. Something that's going to change the way you see yourself, the way you see your doubters, and the way you see every failure you've ever experienced. I'm going to show you the one thing that every person who has ever laughed at and went on to do something extraordinary has in common. And it's not talent, it's not money, it's not connections, it's not even discipline. It's something else entirely, something you already have inside you. Something that's been waiting coiled like a spring, compressed by years of other people's opinions and your own fear ready to explode. But you have to see it first. You have to understand it. You have to name it. And once you do, once you truly understand what's been sitting inside you this whole time, buried under the rubble of every rejection and every laugh and every sleepless night, everything changes. Not slowly, not gradually, not over time, like a switch, like someone turning on the lights in a room you've been stumbling around in the dark for years. But that's for part 2. And trust me, you're going to want to hear it, because what I'm about to reveal is the reason some people hear laughter and crumble and other people hear laughter and become absolutely terrifyingly unstoppable. Don't go anywhere. Your life's about to crack wide open. And those faces you remember, those people who laughed, they have no idea what's coming. They have no idea what's coming, and neither do you. Not yet. Because the thing I promised you, the one thing that separates the people who were laughed at and crumbled from the people who were laughed at and became unstoppable, it's not what you think. It's not some secret technique. It's not a morning routine. It's not a book or a podcast or a guru. It's a decision. One single, irreversible, bone-deep decision that changes everything, not gradually, not over weeks, in a moment. In one terrifying, electric, gut-wrenching moment where you stop being the person things happen to and become the person who makes things happen. And I'm going to show you exactly what that decision looks like, what it feels like, what it costs, because it does cost something. Everything worth having does. But first, I need you to understand something about where you are right now, right this second, because you're standing at a door. You've been standing at this door your whole life. And on the other side of it is everything you've ever wanted. The business, the freedom, the respect, the life that makes your chest swell when you think about it. But the door is locked. And the key is made of something you've been taught to throw away, something everyone around you has been begging you to get rid of your entire life. The key is made of your pain. Let me tell you about a man who understood this better than almost anyone who ever lived. His name was David, and when he was a child, his world was violence. His father beat him, beat his mother, made the house feel like a cage with no exit. David went to school every day carrying bruises he couldn't explain and a shame he couldn't name. He was one of the few black kids in his town, and the cruelty followed him everywhere. The slurs, the isolation, the feeling of being invisible in a world that only saw him when it wanted to hurt him. By his 20s, David was broken. Not in the poetic, romantic way people talk about being broken, actually broken. He weighed nearly 300 pounds. He worked as a pest exterminator, crawling under sinks in greasy restaurant kitchens, spraying chemicals on cockroaches at midnight. He'd come home smelling like poison and failure, sit on his couch, eat whatever was closest, and stare at the TV until he fell asleep. Every day, the same loop, the same nothingness, the same quiet desperation of a man who had given up on himself so completely that he couldn't even feel the giving up anymore. It just felt like everyone around him had already written his ending. His story was decided. Another kid from a broken home who never amounted to anything. Another statistic, another face in the crowd that nobody would remember. Then one night, something happened. He was sitting on that same couch, same routine, same deadness in his eyes, and a commercial came on, or maybe it was a documentary. He tells it differently sometimes about Navy SEALs. The training, the brutality of it. Hell-weak men being pushed past every limit the human body was supposed to have. Men who refused to quit when everything, their muscles, their minds, their very biology was screaming at them to stop, and David felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not inspiration, not motivation, something raw than that, something more violent. He felt rage, not at the SEALs, at himself. He looked down at his own body, 297 pounds of regret and excuses and surrendered potential. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel sorry for himself. He felt furious, furious at every excuse he'd ever made, furious at every day he'd wasted, furious at the version of himself he'd become. This soft, defeated, invisible ghost of a man who had let the world decide his story for him. And in that moment, in that exact specific, unrepeatable moment, he made the decision. Not a New Year's resolution, not a maybe I should try, not a starting Monday a decision, the kind that burns the old you to the ground and forces a new one to rise from the ashes, whether it wants to or not. He got up the next morning at 4 a.m., he put on shoes that barely fit over his swollen feet, and he ran. The first steps felt like dragging a coffin. His lungs burned, his knees screamed, his entire body. Every organ, every joint, every fiber was begging him to stop, to go back to the couch, to go back to the comfortable death of his old life. He didn't stop. He ran the next day and the next and the next. He lost 106 pounds in 3 months, 106 pounds in 90 days. Not because he found some magical diet, not because he had a trainer or a coach or a support system. He had nothing. Nobody believed in him. Nobody was cheering him on. The only thing he had was the memory of every person who had ever looked at him and seen nothing. He used those faces as fuel. He applied for the Navy SEALs, failed the entrance test, applied again, failed again, applied again, failed a third time. 3 times he was told he wasn't enough. 3 times the doors slammed in his face. And 3 times he got up, dusted himself off, and knocked again harder. On his 4th attempt, he made it. David Goggins became a Navy SEAL, then an Army Ranger, then an ultra-endurance athlete who ran 200-mile races through Death Valley. In 130 degrees heat, he set a world record for pull-ups over 4,017 hours. He became the kind of person that other people call insane, impossible, superhuman. But he's none of those things. He's just a man who decided in one single electric moment that the people who laughed at him, the people who heard him, the people who wrote him off were going to be wrong. And here's the part I need you to hear. The part that applies directly to your life right now today. Goggins didn't become extraordinary because he stopped feeling pain. He became extraordinary because he changed his relationship with pain. He stopped running from it. He stopped trying to numb it with food and distraction and comfortable lies. He turned around, looked pain dead in the face, and said, "You're mine now. I own you, and I'm going to use you to build something nobody can take away from me." That's the shift. That's the decision. That's what I've been building towards since part 1. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that's Goggins. That's an extreme case. That's a guy who's wired differently. I'm not like that. Stop. Stop right there. Because that sentence you just said in your head is the exact lie that's been keeping you chained to your old life. I'm not like that. I'm not built for that. That's for special people. No, that's for deciding people. Goggins wasn't special. He was 300 pounds spraying cockroaches for a living, eating himself to death on a couch. He wasn't born with some mutant gene for discipline. He was born into abuse and poverty and hopelessness. The only thing that separated him from the millions of other people in the exact same situation is that he made a decision they didn't make. And the same is true for every single person I told you about in part 1. Walt Disney didn't have a creativity gene that his boss couldn't see. He had a decision. A decision to keep creating even after someone told him his imagination was worthless. Stephen King didn't have magical writing talent that somehow eluded 30 publishers. He had a decision. A decision. Well, his wife had the decision to pull a manuscript out of the trash and try one more time. Jack Ma didn't have some secret business formula. He had a decision to knock on the next door after being rejected from KFC, from the police force, from Harvard 10 times. It's always the decision. It's never the talent. It's never the resources. It's never the timing. It's never the background. It's the moment you decide, truly decide in your bones, in your blood, in the deepest basement of who you are, that the laughter stops here, the doubt stops here, the old version of you dies here, and a new version is born, a version that uses the laughter as a weapon. Now, let me show you how, because a decision without discipline is just a wish. And I'm not here to help you wish, I'm here to help you win. There's a concept that Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest basketball players who ever lived, talked about before he died. He called it the Mamba mentality. And on the surface, it sounds like a sports thing, a basketball thing, a gym bro thing. It's not. It's a life thing. And once you understand it, you'll never look at your daily routine the same way again. When Kobe was 11 years old, he played an entire summer league season in Philadelphia without scoring a single point. Not one, not a free throw, not a lucky bounce off the rim, 0 points for an entire season. An 11-year-old kid playing basketball every day and failing every single time. Most kids would quit. Most kids would say, "I'm not good at this." Most kids would walk away and find something easier. Kobe did the opposite. He went home and he practiced not for an hour, not for the length of a normal practice. He practiced for hours every single day, taking the same shot from the same spot on the court hundreds of times. While other kids his age were practicing twice a week for an hour, Kobe was in the gym every day alone, working on one thing at a time, one move, one shot, one angle, over and over and over until his muscles didn't just remember the motion, they owned it. By 14, he was the best player in his state. And that right there is the thing nobody tells you about discipline. It's not about doing everything. It's about doing one thing with such insane, unreasonable, obsessive focus that you become undeniable. Not good, not talented, undeniable. The kind of person that no amount of doubt or rejection or laughter can stop because the work speaks so loudly that every mouth in the room goes silent. Kobe once said something that I think about every single day. He said that most people say they want to be great, but they're not willing to make the sacrifices necessary. They have other concerns. They spread themselves out, and that's fine. But greatness is not for the scattered. Greatness is for the obsessed. And I don't mean obsessed in the way social media uses that word like, oh, I'm obsessed with this new show. I mean obsessed in the way that makes people worry about you, the kind of obsession where your friends stop calling because you're always working, the kind where your family thinks something is wrong with you, the kind where people look at your schedule and say, that's not healthy, and you smile and keep going because you know something they don't. You know that the pain of discipline is nothing compared to the pain of regret. You know that the discomfort of sacrifice is temporary, but the agony of what if lasts forever. Kobe was the first player to arrive at practice, sometimes 5 hours before anyone else showed up. He would train in the dark before the gym lights came on. When his teammates walked in at the normal time, he was already drenched in sweat, already a 100 shots ahead, and when practice ended, he stayed. He wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone else. He was proving something to himself. He was proving that the kid who scored 0 points in an entire season wasn't his identity. It was his starting line, and that is the mental shift I need you to make right now. Whatever you scored 0 points in, whatever area of your life where you failed publicly, where people saw you stumble, where the laughter was loudest, that wasn't the end of your story. That was page 1. But here's where most people fall apart. And I need you to pay very close attention here because this is the trap. This is the invisible wall that stops 99% of people who make the decision and start the work. They stop when it stops feeling good. They start with fire. They make the decision. They wake up early for a week, maybe 2. They feel the momentum. They feel alive for the first time in years, and then the fire fades. The alarm goes off at 5 a.m., and the bed feels warm, and the voice in their head says, you deserve a break. You've been working hard. One day off won't hurt. And that one day becomes 2, and 2 becomes a week. And a week becomes, I'll start again on Monday, and Monday becomes never. I've watched this happen 1,000 times, and every single time the person who quits tells themselves the same lie. I just wasn't motivated enough. Wrong. Motivation had nothing to do with it. Listen to me very carefully. Motivation is a lie. It's a beautiful, seductive, dangerous lie that the self-help industry has been selling you for decades. The idea that you need to feel like doing something in order to do it, that you need inspiration, that you need energy, that you need to be in the zone is the single biggest fraud in human performance. You know who doesn't wait for motivation? The person who shows up every day whether they feel like it or not. The person who treats their craft like a job, not a hobby, because they understand that consistency is not glamorous, it's not exciting, it's not Instagram worthy, but it's the only thing that actually works. Kobe talked about this. He said he sacrificed sleep instead of sacrificing his game or his family. He didn't wake up at 4 a.m. because he was motivated. He woke up at 4 a.m. because he had made a non-negotiable commitment to himself. And he was not the kind of person who broke promises to himself. That's the secret. That's the thing nobody posts about on social media because it doesn't look cool. It doesn't make a good reel. There's no dramatic music. There's no speech. It's just you alone. At 4 a.m. doing the work again, when nobody's watching, when nobody cares, when the results haven't shown up yet, when the world is still asleep and you're the only person awake who believes in what you're building, that's where champions are made. Not on the stage, not in the spotlight, not in the moment of victory, in the dark, in the silence, in the invisible hours that nobody sees. Goggins calls it embracing suffering. Kobe called it obsessing over the process. I call it something simpler. I call it paying the price because everything you want has a price, not a money price, a pain, a sacrifice price, a loneliness price. My friends don't understand me anymore price. My family thinks I've lost my mind price. I haven't had a fun weekend in 6 months price. And most people look at that price tag and put the dream back on the shelf, but not you. Not anymore because you remember the faces and the faces are more expensive than the price. Let me tell you about something that happened to Kobe that most people don't know about. Around 2003, 2004, his life fell apart. Not just his career, his entire identity. He went from being on top of the world to being publicly dragged through the worst period of his life. Every sponsor except Nike dropped him. His reputation was destroyed. The media circled him like vultures. People who had cheered for him last season were now calling for his head. And this is the part that matters, because what Kobe did next is the blueprint for what you need to do when the world turns its back on you. He created an alter ego. He sat down and he made a conscious decision to separate the person who was being attacked from the player who needed to perform. He couldn't control what people said about him. He couldn't control the media. He couldn't control public opinion, but he could control what happened between those four lines on the basketball court. So he invented the Black Mamba. The Black Mamba didn't care what people thought. The Black Mamba didn't flinch when the crowd booed. The Black Mamba didn't read the headlines or listen to the commentators or wonder what his old friends were saying behind his back. The Black Mamba had one job: destroy everything in his path. And that's exactly what he did. He came back with a ferocity that shocked even the people who knew him best. He trained harder than ever. He studied opponents with the obsessive detail of a scientist, watching every game, reading every article, finding every weakness, exploiting every flaw. He learned to speak multiple languages just so he could talk trash to international players in their own tongue. He didn't just want to beat people, he wanted to make them feel small because that's what they'd done to him. Now, I'm not telling you to become cold, I'm not telling you to become cruel, I'm telling you something far more important. I'm telling you to become intentional. The people who laughed at you, they had an emotional reaction. It was careless, thoughtless, impulsive. They didn't plan to destroy your confidence, they just did. Your response can't be careless. Your response can't be impulsive. Your response has to be surgical, calculated, deliberate. The kind of response that takes weeks, months, years to execute, but when it lands so hard that the ground shakes. Goggins didn't run 1 mile and call it revenge. He ran thousands. He ran until the people who laughed couldn't see him anymore because he was so far ahead that their voices faded into nothing. Kobe didn't play one good game and call it a comeback. He played 20 years, 5 championships, 18 All-Star selections, 81 points in a single game, the second highest individual score in NBA history. He played until the word Kobe didn't mean the guy who fell. It meant the guy who refused to stay down. Your comeback isn't a moment. It's a war, and wars aren't won with passion alone, they're won with strategy. So here's what I need you to do, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I'm not going to make it sound pretty or easy or fun because it's not. Stop announcing your plans. I mean it. Stop telling people what you're going to do. Stop posting about your goals. Stop sharing your vision with people who haven't earned the right to hear it. Because here's what happens. Every time you tell someone your plan, you get a tiny hit of satisfaction, a little dopamine rush, a feeling that you've already accomplished something just by saying it out loud. And that feeling, that premature reward, actually makes you less likely to follow through. Your brain thinks the work is already done because it got the social reward without the effort. Work in silence. Let the results be the announcement. Let the transformation speak for itself. Let the people who laugh find out what you've been doing. Not because you told them, but because they can't ignore it anymore. There's a reason the most dangerous animals are the quiet ones. Lions don't roar before they hunt. They move through the tall grass, invisible, patient, calculating, and by the time you hear them, it's already over. Be the lion. Second, and this is harder, you need to cut the people who laugh. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, out of survival. Goggins talked about this. He called it the foxhole mentality. In combat, you only want people in your foxhole who are willing to fight with you, people who will cover your back, people who will stay when the bullets fly. Look around your life right now. Who's in your foxhole? Are they people who lift you up when you talk about your dreams? Or are they people who subtly, gently, lovingly pull you back down to where they are? Are they people who challenge you to be better? Or are they people who feel threatened when you try to grow? You know who they are. You've always known. You just didn't want to face it. Because cutting people is painful. Because loneliness is terrifying. Because the idea of building something with no support system feels impossible. It's not impossible. It's required. Every person who ever changed the world went through a season of isolation. A period where the old tribe fell away and the new tribe hadn't arrived yet. A stretch of days, weeks, sometimes months, where it was just them and their dream in an empty room. And it was terrifying and it was lonely and it was absolutely unquestionably necessary because you can't build a new life surrounded by people who are invested in the old one. I can feel you changing right now. I can feel the shift happening inside you as you listen to this. Something is tightening in your chest. Something is sharpening behind your eyes. The fog is lifting. The excuses are getting quieter. The fear is still there, but for the first time, it's not in charge. Good. Hold on to that feeling because in part 3, I'm going to take everything we've built, the pain from part 1, the weapons from part 2, and I'm going to show you what happens when you actually pull the trigger. I'm going to show you what happens when the person who was laughed at stops preparing and starts executing. I'm going to show you the moment when the results start showing up, when the phone starts ringing, when the same people who dismissed you start watching you from the corner of their eye trying to figure out what happened, when the invitations come, when the respect comes, when the money comes, when the freedom comes. And I'm going to show you something even more powerful than all of that. I'm going to show you the moment you realize you don't even care about their faces anymore. The moment the revenge stops mattering. Not because you gave up on it, but because you grew past it. The moment you realize that the laughter that almost killed you was actually the thing that created you. But we're not there yet. You can see the summit now. You can see the peak through the clouds. You can feel how close you are. But the last stretch of any mountain is the steepest. The air is thinnest, the wind is strongest, and more people turn back in the final mile than in all the miles before it combined. Part 3 is the final mile, and I need you there. Not because I want views, not because I want clicks, because you've come too far to stop now. The decision has been made. The weapons have been forged. The old version of you is bleeding out on the floor behind you. There's only one direction left, up. And when you get to the top, when you're standing there looking out at the life you built from the ashes of everything they burned, you're going to feel something you haven't felt in years. Not revenge, something better, something permanent. But first you have to survive the climb. I'll see you in part 3. Don't you dare stop now. You're still here. Good. Because the people who left, the people who clicked away after part 1 or lost interest during part 2, they just told the universe something about themselves. They told the universe they're comfortable where they are. They told the universe that the old version is good enough, that the laughter can keep playing, that the faces can keep winning, but you didn't leave. You're still here. And that tells me something. It tells me the decision has already been made. You might not have said it out loud yet. You might not have written it down. You might not even be fully conscious of it. But something shifted inside you over the last hour. Something cracked. Something moved. The version of you that walked into this video is not the version listening right now, and you can feel it. This strange, unfamiliar, almost frightening sensation in your chest, like the first ray of sun hitting your face after years of living underground. That sensation has a name. It's called becoming. Not wanting to become, not hoping to become, not trying to become, becoming present tense happening right now, this second, this breath. And the only question left, the only question that matters anymore is what are you going to do with the person you're becoming? Because that person, that new version of you, they're dangerous, they're hungry, they're awake in a way they haven't been in years. And the world is not ready for them. But the world doesn't get to be ready. The world doesn't get a vote. You do. Let me show you what happens next. There was a woman, and if you take nothing else from this entire 3-part series, if you forget everything I said about Goggins, about Kobe, about the decision, about the discipline, remember her because her story is your story. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. She was 25 years old. She had just lost her mother to a disease that ate away at her body for years while everyone watched and couldn't do a thing about it. Her marriage had collapsed. Short, painful, humiliating. She had a baby daughter who depended on her for everything, and she had nothing. No job, no money, no plan. She applied for welfare because she literally could not afford food. She lived in a cold, damp apartment in Edinburgh, Scotland. The kind of apartment where you can see your breath in the morning. The kind where the walls seem to close in on you at night while you're lying awake, calculating how many days you can stretch the last of your money before it runs out. She was clinically depressed, not feeling sad. Depressed, the kind where the darkness has weight. The kind where getting out of bed feels like bench pressing a car. The kind where you stand in front of the mirror and the person looking back at you is a stranger. A hollow, exhausted stranger whose eyes have forgotten what hope looks like. She later described herself as the biggest failure I knew. And here's the thing that breaks my heart and fills it at the same time. During those dark years in that freezing apartment with a baby sleeping in the next room and the whole world telling her she was nothing, she was writing. She'd take her daughter to a cafe. She'd order 1 cup of coffee, the cheapest one on the menu. And she'd sit there for hours while her baby slept in the pram next to her. And she'd write by hand in longhand, page after page after page of a story about a boy who didn't know he was special. A boy who lived under a staircase, mistreated and overlooked and laughed at, until one day he discovered he had powers nobody could take away from him. She wasn't just writing a story, she was writing herself back to life. She finished the manuscript, typed it up on a manual typewriter she bought with a grant, and she sent it out into the world. 12 publishers rejected it. 12. One after another, too long. Children's books about magic don't sell. Not marketable. 12 doors slammed in her face. 12 people looked at the thing she had poured her broken heart into and said, no, most people would have stopped at 3. Most people would have stopped at 1. She didn't stop at 12. She sent it a 13th time to a small publishing house in London called Bloomsbury, and the person who read it happened to give the first chapter to his 8-year-old daughter. The little girl read it, then came back an hour later demanding the rest. The publisher said yes, and the woman Joanne Rowling, the woman who couldn't afford heating, the woman who was told she was the biggest failure, became J.K. Rowling, the creator of Harry Potter, the best-selling book series in human history. Over 500 million copies sold, translated into 65 languages, a franchise worth over $15 billion, the first person on earth to become a billionaire by writing books. But that's not the part of the story that matters most. This is Rowling gave away so much of her money to charity supporting single parents, to organizations fighting poverty, to a clinic she built in her mother's name to combat the disease that killed her, that she actually fell off the Forbes billionaire list. She's one of the only people in history to lose billionaire status, not through bad investments, not through scandal, not through failure, but through generosity. She built a school for girls in Africa. She funded research to cure the disease that stole her mother. She became the president of an organization that supports single parents. People exactly like the woman she used to be, sitting in that cold apartment wondering if tomorrow was even worth waking up for. The woman who was laughed at became the woman who lifted millions. And I need you to sit with that for a second, because this isn't just a feel-good story. This isn't something to share on social media with a crying emoji. This is a blueprint. This is proof. This is mathematical, historical, undeniable evidence that the distance between the biggest failure I knew and the person who changed the world is not years. It's not money. It's not talent. It's one decision. And the discipline to honor that decision every single day, even when the cafe owner wants you to leave, even when the publishers say no, even when the whole world is laughing and you're the only one who can hear the music. Now, let me tell you why your story matters more than you think. And I mean you. Not Rowling, not Goggins, not Kobe, you. Because here's something most people never consider, something that will change the way you see yourself if you let it in. You are not the only person affected by your decision. Right now, there are people watching you. People you don't even know are paying attention. Your little brother, your daughter, your niece, the kid down the street who sees you leave for work every morning, the coworker who sits 2 desks away and secretly admires your ambition but has never told you. These people are watching, and they're waiting not for your success, not for your money, not for your title or your car or your followers. They're waiting to see if you'll have the courage to try. Because if you try, if someone from your background, with your limitations, with your scars, actually goes for it, actually chases the thing, actually refuses to stay down, then maybe they can too. Maybe their dream isn't as crazy as everyone says. Maybe the laughter doesn't have to win. Maybe there's another way. You think this is just about you? It was never just about you. Every time a person rises from the ashes of other people's doubt, they become a lighthouse. Not because they're trying to be, not because they want attention, simply because a person on fire is impossible to ignore. And the light from that fire reaches people you've never met in places you've never been, at moments you'll never know about. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first TV job. They told her she was unfit for TV. She was too emotional, the wrong color, the wrong size, the wrong everything. They demoted her, humiliated her, tried to break her spirit by giving her the worst time slot, 5:30 in the morning, doing nothing. And what happened? That demotion led to a talk show. That talk show became the highest rated program in Chicago. That program became the Oprah Winfrey Show, the most successful talk show in television history. 25 seasons, over 22,000 guests, a production company, a network, a book club that single-handedly turned unknown authors into bestsellers, an endorsement of a presidential candidate that economists estimated generated over 1 million votes. She became the first black woman billionaire in American history, and she used that platform, a platform built on the foundation of being fired, of being told she was unfit to change the lives of millions of people who had been told the exact same thing. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. What if she had believed them? What if Oprah had looked at that demotion and said, they're right, I'm not cut out for this? What if she'd taken the safe route, gotten a different career, lived a quiet, comfortable, unremarkable life? How many people would have never heard their own story told out loud for the first time? How many single mothers would have never seen someone who looked like them standing at the top of the world? How many kids in poverty would have never been told by someone who had been there that their circumstances are not their destiny? That's the cost of quitting. It's not just what you lose, it's what the world loses. It's the books that never get written, the businesses that never get built, the speeches that never get given, the lives that never get touched, the chain of inspiration that never gets started, because the first link gave up. When you quit, you don't just kill your dream. You kill the dreams of everyone who would have been inspired by yours. That's the weight of this moment, and that's why you can't afford to waste it. There's a man somewhere right now, maybe in a small town in India, maybe in a township in South Africa, maybe in a rural village in Bangladesh, maybe in a forgotten neighborhood in Detroit, who is sitting where you sat at the beginning of part 1. He's carrying the same pain, the same doubt, the same memory of laughter, the same feeling of being invisible in a world that only notices the loud, the confident, the privileged. And one day, maybe next month, maybe next year, maybe 5 years from now, that man is going to stumble across your story. Not Oprah's, not Rowling's, not Goggins, yours. He's going to hear about someone who was laughed at, who was dismissed, who was counted out, and who refused to stay down. He's going to hear about someone from a background like his, with limitations like his, with scars like his, and he's going to think for the first time in his life, if they did it, maybe I can too. And in that moment, everything changes. Not just for him, for his family, for his children, for his children's children, for every life he touches after that. That is your legacy. Not the money, not the title, not the fame. The moment someone looks at your life and finds the courage to start their own. You don't even have to be alive when it happens. You don't even have to know about it. Legacy doesn't ask for your permission. It just radiates outward endlessly from the single point where one person decided to stop being small. And that single point is right now. So here it is. The moment I've been building toward for 3 parts. The final thing I need to say to you, I'm not going to ask you to think about it. I'm not going to say whenever you're ready. I'm not going to give you a comfortable escape hatch where you can nod along and go back to your life tomorrow and pretend this hour didn't happen, because it did happen. And you can't unhear what you've heard. You can't unhear the truth that the people who laughed at you were scared, not superior. You can't unfeel the fire that started burning in your chest when I told you about Goggins standing up from that couch. You can't unsee the image of Rowling sitting in that cafe. Broken, writing a story that would change the world, because she refused to let 12 rejections be the last word. Those images are inside you now. Those stories are inside you now, and they're going to haunt you. Not in a dark way, in a bright way. Every time you reach for your phone instead of your dream, every time you hit snooze instead of getting up, every time you choose comfort over courage, they'll be there whispering, reminding, demanding. So here's what's going to happen. When this video ends, when my voice stops, you're going to have approximately 60 seconds. 60 seconds where the fire is at its peak. 60 seconds where the old you and the new you are standing face to face, and one of them has to go. In those 60 seconds, you're going to do one thing. One thing, not 10 things, not a whole life plan, one thing. You're going to open your phone or your laptop or your notebook, and you're going to write down the thing you've been afraid to do. The thing you buried, the thing you locked in that room inside your chest. The thing that makes your hands shake and your pulse quicken because it's so big, so terrifying, so beautiful that the thought of actually doing it makes you want to cry. Write it down. Not think about writing it down. Write it down with your actual fingers on an actual surface. Because a dream that exists only in your head is a wish. A dream that exists on paper is a plan. And a plan is the first step of a war. And this is the part that separates the people who watch motivational videos from the people who actually change their lives. You're going to take one action tonight, not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Send the email, make the call, register the domain, sign up for the class, write the first page, record the first video, reach out to the mentor, submit the application. One action, that's all, because one action breaks the seal. One action proves to yourself that you're not the person who just watches. You're the person who moves. And once you move, once you take that first terrifying step, you'll realize something that will shake you to your core. It wasn't as hard as you thought. The wall you've been staring at for years, it was made of paper. The fear you've been carrying, it was a bluff. The laughter you've been running from, it has no teeth, it never did. It was just noise. Noise designed to keep you in a cage that doesn't even have a lock on it. You were never trapped. You were never stuck. You were never not good enough. You were just standing still. And standing still in the presence of a dream that demands movement is the only real failure. Not the rejections, not the setbacks, not the laughter. Standing still, so move. I want you to picture something. And I want you to picture it so vividly that it feels more real than the room you're sitting in right now. Picture yourself 1 year from today, 12 months from this moment, 365 days of discipline, of sacrifice, of getting up before the sun and working after the moon. 365 days of ignoring the noise, of showing up when you don't feel like it, of doing the invisible work that nobody posts about. Where are you? Not where you hope to be. Where are you? See it? The room, the light, the feeling of the air on your skin, the weight of your body. Lighter now because you dropped the burden of other people's opinions somewhere around month 3 and never picked it back up. See the phone that rings now with opportunities instead of doubts. See the bank account that reflects months of relentless work. See the face in the mirror. Your face, but different. The eyes are different. They're sharper, calmer, fierce, but peaceful. The eyes of someone who went to war with themselves and won. See the people around you, new people, people who match the energy of the person you've become, people who don't need you to shrink so they can feel tall, people who push you higher instead of pulling you back. And somewhere in the back of your mind, almost forgotten now, almost irrelevant, the faces of the people who laughed, you can still see them if you try, but you don't try very often anymore. Not because you forgave them. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. That's your business. But because they become so small, so distant, so utterly insignificant compared to the life you're building, they didn't change. They're still right where you left them. Same couch, same excuses, same small talk about small dreams, same comfortable mediocrity disguised as being realistic. But you're unrecognizable. Not because you changed your appearance or your address or your title, because you changed the voice inside your head. The voice that used to say, "Who do you think you are?" now says, "Watch me." The voice that used to say, "Be realistic," now says, "I make my own reality." The voice that used to play the sound of laughter on loop now plays something else entirely. Silence. The powerful, deafening, holy silence of a person who no longer needs anyone's approval, who no longer flinches when someone doubts them, who no longer explains themselves, defends themselves, or apologizes for the size of their ambition. A person who remembered the faces and used them as fuel until the fire burned so bright that the faces became shadows and the shadows became nothing and the nothing became freedom. That person is you, not someday you, not future you, not if everything goes right you, the one listening right now, the one with the tight chest and the wet eyes and the hands that are already reaching for the phone to write something down. Let me leave you with this. When you press play on this video, you were carrying something heavy, something old, something that had been sitting on your shoulders for so long you forgot it wasn't part of your body. It was the weight of their laughter. And for 3 parts, for over an hour, we've been doing something together. We've been pulling that weight off your back piece by piece, first by naming it, then by understanding it, then by transforming it. The pain became awareness. The awareness became a decision. The decision became discipline. The discipline became momentum. And the momentum becomes a life. Your life, the one you were always supposed to live, the one that was waiting for you on the other side of every fear, every excuse, every night you spent staring at the ceiling wondering if you'd ever feel alive again. You will. You already do. I can feel it from here. So, when you close this video and the room goes quiet and you're sitting there with nothing but the sound of your own heartbeat, don't be afraid of the silence. For the first time in your life, the silence isn't your enemy. It's not the empty space where the laughter echoes, it's the space where your new life begins. And years from now, 5, 10, 20 years from now, when you're standing somewhere extraordinary, somewhere the old you could never have imagined, you're going to look back at this moment, this exact moment, and you're going to smile. Not a smug smile, not a vindictive smile, a quiet, knowing, deeply grateful smile, because you'll remember the night you almost gave up, the night the faces almost won, the night you were one click, one excuse, one I'll start tomorrow away from losing everything. And you'll remember that you didn't. You stayed, you listened, you decided, and you became the person that nobody, not the doubters, not the laughers, not even you believed you could be. They laughed at you. Good. You remember their faces. Good. Now go build a life so loud that their laughter becomes